Welcome to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you burn fat, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey guys, it's Debbie, and have you used a CGM before? CGM is continuous glucose monitor, and there's different options out there. Ideally, you can get it from your doctor, but they seem to just want to wait until you're type 2 diabetic and not be preventative. I would like us to take ownership of our health and make choices now to prevent having high, low glucose readings and optimize your health from the inside out by testing and not guessing. And that includes a CGM that goes on for 14 days, and you can order one via NutriSense. And a CGM is giving you glucose updates with a small device in the back of your arm 24/7. Totally easy. I actually did a video on my YouTube channel, Low Carb Athlete, how to apply this CGM. First time, kind of scared, but it doesn't hurt. But it gives you real-time glucose readings. Glucose response to meals. You'll learn about what foods are reactive to you, and that could be a healthy food that you think is great, but it could raise your glucose. Simple things as stevia, for me, raise my glucose. Chewing gum, raise my glucose. Stress, when I'm driving a car and there's traffic, raises my glucose. Every stress response is a glucose response. So learn how to manage your stress. Learn how to pick right foods for you, unless you can, do other lab testing and figure out vibrant wellness food zoomers, but it's kind of expensive for people. So if you can wear a CGM, it's a great way to learn about stress, food, exercise, stacking movement with your nutrition. Figure out how to balance your blood sugar. So we want to learn more about how to exercise and eat or not eat. And morning cortisol, does it raise your glucose? If there's hidden stressors at nighttime, does your glucose go up higher while you're sleeping? So it gives us lots of clues that we can put in our investigation when we are working on your personalized fueling, training, and performance program to improve fat loss, performance, and longevity. So head to NutriSense website, nutrisense.io, how it works. You can learn more about your habits, your routines, your relationship to food, a little bit more. Great app to use, and it can sync on to different programs, so you can put it all together. So if you want to get started with your journey in NutriSense, I suggest this to all my clients. Use at least 30 days. So you can do a 30-day, 90-day, different programs, but you can pick which one you want. You get the sensor in the mail, put it on, lasts for 14 days, sync it to the app, and get your readings on there. And then if you're doing my VIP coaching program, I'm working with you to correlate this data together. So begin your health optimization journey with NutriSense, and you can save on your order with our code, as usual, Low Carb Athlete. So no carbs is not our goal, it's carb timing, and using NutriSense, you can help figure out your nutrient-dense whole food plan and when to adjust your macros based on your exercise intensity, duration, based on your life stressors, and learn more. So it's nice to have this data. So test and not guess with NutriSense. Let me know how you like it.
Hey guys, it's Debbie, and I just wanted to do another podcast on zone training as I'm putting together my coaching program for helping people have weight loss, fat loss goals, longevity, health goals, and then performance. And what I'm doing is PNOE metabolic testing, so you can look up someone in your area or come to San Diego to get the test done. But I just want to explain the whys. We always want to look at, why do I need this? Why should I take this? Why should I do this? Why should I eat this? Metabolic health, nutrition, weight management, performance, longevity, and mental health are areas that we can help improve by testing and not guessing, as I always say. So there's functional lab testings to reveal hidden internal sources of chronic stress. So you have no idea what's going on unless you test. Trust me, I've gone through all the labs. and really have identified my areas of opportunities and protocols to do and help repair and rebuild and restore my health so I can perform my best. And it's an ongoing journey because I got myself into a major hole. If you read my story, my book, Life is Not a Race, It is a Journey, I went from high performing athlete, top age group athlete, triathlon, Ironman distance was my favorite, 70.3s, marathons, 50K runs. And then 10 years ago, went to having best shape of my life, best race times in Ironman Hawaii 2012. Then 2013, tried doing Carlsbad Marathon in January, just couldn't hit my times. And then 50K trail run in February. And I was having my heart rates really high. I was really slow for me. And I just couldn't figure out what was wrong because I'd be doing a 50K run by my heart rate. So that was something I shared before, that my husband was in the car waiting for me in the rain for an hour because I took so long to finish. He wondered what happened to me. So my purpose now is to help you avoid going through what I have done to myself in my previous life. And my new life is being a coach that's going to help you with the holistic method. So working on nutrition, exercise, but the sleep and the stress and the movement, mobility drills, digestion, gut health, gut repair, hydration, mineral balancing, and of course, happiness, joy, laughter, which I think people might laugh at, but it's something we get to, we don't do enough as type A, driven, ambitious. If you got to be where, how I used to be, it was a little competitive, very serious. I didn't realize, I can't even remember who I was before. People would say, I didn't talk to them if they're female because I always wanted to beat people that were in my age group, and I was just all about triathlons and just focused on my training and ran my own fitness studio at the same time. So just always busy, and friends that were not athletes and not in my triathlon world would always wonder if I was ever going to go visit them that lived out of town. And they always just started asking me, oh, there's a race. Do you want to come visit me? There's a race that weekend. Because they think I'd only go somewhere if there's a race. Probably yes. Sadly, that was me. And I think there's a lot of you out there that can relate, that we get so sucked into this competitive world and racing, and we feel great and we keep signing up for another race, and then suddenly we're not just doing one big race a year, we're doing two. And then if you're like me, the off season got to be doing marathons and 50K runs, and then in season you're doing triathlons and you're doing Ironman. And if you qualify for Ironman Hawaii, then you've got 2 Ironmans you're doing in 1 year, and then you're doing other shorter races to train for your big race. And it gets to be a full-time job, and it gets to be your lifestyle, and it becomes your social life too. And you lose a lot of friends or get disconnected to friends that aren't in that world. And then you get to the other side of it, like me now, and go, okay, what was I like? How did I do that? I don't know how I had that drive. So anyways, now I'm doing Pinoy metabolic testing, combining that with functional lab testing if people want to add on services as a blood chemistry panel, and looking at their GI tests, looking at Dutch hormone tests, looking at comprehensive blood count panel, and other tests as organic acids tests. Sometimes we need to run, and hair tissue mineral analysis, all this. So we figure out what you need. But locally, I will be doing, obviously it's in person to do metabolic testing at rest and exercise. And what I've been learning, I want to share with you because I think it's such good information that we don't hear enough about on other podcasts, on social media. We hear about zone 2. We hear about interval training. But as I said in the previous podcast, I don't think people really know what their zone 2 is. You don't know what your numbers are unless you test and not guess. And I say that all the time, but it's true. You don't know what you don't know, and you're just guessing. We use formulas and maybe the max aerobic function heart rate. When I used to do metabolic testing with New Leaf 15 years ago, we would see, I would look at what would their math be and where is your peak fat burning heart rate in this test. Well, it was often similar. But nowadays, what we're doing when we're doing a metabolic test is figuring out all these, we're collecting all this data, and we've got amazing AI and programs that, we did everything by hand, and I tell your zones and tell your metabolic crossover point, anaerobic threshold. But now we get this whole biological age and performance analysis. If you're trying to look at pillars of longevity, we look at, the mental health, heart health, lung health, cellular health, posture. And then we get a whole report, aerobic health, your cardiovascular fitness score, respiratory capability score, respiratory capacity score, expiratory power, respiratory coordination, breathing and cognition, breathing and stability, fat burning efficiency, metabolic rate, and then we get performance metrics as your movement economy, high intensity performance, recovery capacity. But what we get from that, when we're measuring your oxygen in and carbon dioxide out, we can see what fuel source you're using, figure out your fat burning efficiency, metabolic rate. We can determine what your biological age is versus your chronological age, which is pretty cool. We can find your VO2 max and health prediction, your aerobic health, cardiovascular fitness, of course. But the big part I want to go specifically into the end of the report that you get is, what should your training program look like? Based on testing, if you're a triathlete, I would do your bike and your treadmill because those heart rate zones will be different. But we're identifying what your limiters are. What are you not training? What are your areas of opportunity that you might have scored lower on in the test? So it's not, someone just asked me today, is this just for extreme athletes? I said, no way. It's for people that want to improve the aging process. If you care about your health, your longevity, if you care about preventing diabetes, because we can identify this and then combine that with the CGM or Keto Mojo and figure out your nutrition by testing with your glucose and ketones, but you can identify how you are at burning fat at rest and during exercise. And then your performance numbers, we can figure out, do you need to do resistance training more? What do you need to focus more? Interval training? What are you doing too much of? And we need to dial it back and then add this in. So we can figure out your personalized training program, intervals, cardio training, and your zones. And as I went into last time, when we do your metabolic test, say if it's on the bike or treadmill, or if you are a swimmer, you can do it on the erg or the Airdyne bike, and then with watts. But your zone 1 is figuring out what your heart rate is, zone 1. If you're doing a bike test, we can figure out what watts are there. Now this, when you do this test, any metabolic test, those results are good for right where you are now. So people say, oh, I got a test 5 years ago. Those numbers are not current. That's not your zone. So you want to retest every quarter, ideally. So zone 1, for example, your heart rate, we can figure out your watts and your speed if you did a bike. Now the benefits of zone 1 is recovery. Really important part here. As I just did a hard bike class today and a hard swim workout, we did a spin class. It's on with watts, and my teacher, Lenita, we did a podcast with her. You should go back and listen to the one with Lenita. She's exercise physiologist, and she knows the research that's out here now and studies also info from Dr. Stacy Sims and what the new research is saying. There's 20, 30-second sprints. Go hard, as in zone 5, short intervals. But interval training is not interval training unless you're going up to that zone 3, 4, 5, whatever your point is, the purpose of your workout. But recovery has to come back to zone 1. So today's workout spin class, we did 8 minutes, hard at our FTP, and then a functional threshold power. And then we did a 6-minute piece, a 4-minute piece, 2 minutes. I think we did 1 minute. And then we did 30 seconds. I think we did 4 of those. Now, going by watts, because you can't get your heart rate to the 30-second time because it's going to be delayed. So you don't really know what your heart rate is, but you can hit those watts if you've done FTP and do a percentage of that. So if you know what your zone 1 is with the metabolic test, you know how low to come by. So this example on this sheet is zone 1 for this person was 110 to 120 heart rate, 120 to 180 watts. Now that doesn't seem accurate to me, but this is a total example. Zone 2, their heart rate is say 120 to 130. In your zone 2, The purpose of it is to enhance fat burning efficiency, cellular health, and improves recovery capacity. This feels like you can exercise here long periods of time. You're able to talk. You're able to hold short conversations. This is good base training, your foundation, your cardio training. So when we say cardio, it's zone 2, it's base training. If you're an endurance athlete, we're training a lot here. But you still need to train the other upper zones. We'll tell you why and when and how much and how long those intervals are and what intensity. Duration should be based on your metabolic test. So it's very much more personalized approach to figuring out your workout program, not just generic program. So zone 2, for example, is 120, 130 heart rate, as I said. They're watts. This is embarrassing. I'm so not even here if this is a true person, but 180 watts to 220 watts. And this is zone 2. We figure out based on where on the test you had your peak fat burning max, not mass, but max for fat burning. And then where is your metabolic crossover point? So that is how we figure out zone 2. So below that, we can figure out that zone 1. And then above that would be zone 3. And then we can figure out your anaerobic threshold levels 1 and 2 when we start to see that change. Now, zone 2, though, so your metabolic crossover point is, remember, when your fat is going down and your carb usage for fuel is going up. So that's your zone 2. So if you want to burn fat, you want to work here, but not only here, as we hear about the benefits of zone 5. So remember that. So zone 3, the benefit is improving your heart fitness. So if we identify some cardiovascular issues in your metabolic test and assessment, we might say, let's do some pieces here. Now, they're not a 30-minute. These are longer intervals and medium endurance. So kind of more what we say tempo. And how it feels like, well, it's the verge of becoming uncomfortable, slightly uncomfortable, short of breath, and you can speak a sentence. You're not huffing and puffing, you're not just feeling totally stressed, but just more that tempo, race pace, we used to call it. Now, zone 4, this is what the benefits are for this person is 155 to 160 heart rate. So zone 3 was 130 to 155, so a lot larger range. Now we're breaking these upper limits up, smaller zones. So zone 4, this is where you increase your fatigue threshold, increases your anaerobic threshold, and improves your VO2 max. So this should feel like difficulty to maintain exercise intensity, hard to speak more than a single word. Now this is medium intervals, heavy endurance. So maybe we're going 5-10 minute pieces to 3 to 5 minutes, and then we hit zone 5, and this example is 160, 190 heart rate, so their top heart rate, and their watts are 300 or higher in the bike. The zone 4 watts was 250 to 300 for this person, for this example, and their zone 3 is 220 to 250 watts. So zone 5, the benefits, this improves your VO2 max, but it also enhances fat burning efficiency and cellular health. Your mitochondria health here increases fatigue threshold. So if we find that your fat burning is really poor, we work on zone 2, and then when you have built up some good foundation, we add in zone 5 intervals. So think of structure first before function. So we're not going to have someone start doing zone 5 if they haven't done anything. That would be inappropriate. So zone 5 feels like it's impossible to continue. This is where I find I need people around me yelling at me or motivating me in a positive way, right? So doing spin class with other cyclists that, we're not dancing on the bike doing push-ups, we're hitting it hard. You're doing short, all out 30 seconds, but you're trying to beat your number you did before. This is what we did today on the stages bikes. And I had a goal, and then I had other people around me working hard, so I wanted to keep up, and it's a little more motivating. Same thing if I did track for running. If I do 400-meter repeats or 200-meter repeats, I need people around me to really get my heart rate up to that zone 5, or else I'm finding if I'm on my own, I'm going to get to zone 3. So I know I need to get more, I haven't done my test yet on myself, but I need someone to test me. But my limiter, I predict, is doing more zone 5 intervals. because I don't think I'm getting there based on what I'm studying now. Short intervals, 30 seconds, all at watts. As I said before when I talked to Lenita on my podcast, it's really hard to go that deep. So if you listen to Dr. Stacy Sims for female athletes that are, endurance athletes and aging female athletes, you got to get your butt kicked. It's hard to go that deep. So you really have to be motivated that day. You can't be in your luteal phase. You have to have good rest, good recovery. You got to find that day that your HRV score rocks, your sleep score rocks, and you feel good. And maybe for a female, it's day 10, day 7 to day 14. You feel like a rock star, superhero. Then you can hit it. Men, you guys just depend on your sleep and your stress levels. But I find it's important to look at this training zone chart. So training zones, we can figure out your percentage of fat burn in each zone. So this example, and this is what you get if you do a test with someone with PNOE, so you can search for that locally. But zone 1, for example, is their fat burn is 95%, zone 2 72%, 28% carbs, zone 3 is 52%, 48%, and then zone 4 is 52% fat, 48% carb burn, zone 5 is 38, carbs are 62%. And so we can find your calories a minute on average, the low end and the upper end of calories burned. So I think that's really interesting, because then the report will show you your fat max. Your ventilatory threshold is called VT1, and there's ventilatory threshold 2. VT2 is also known as anaerobic threshold. So we can see that metabolic crossover point, find that ventilatory threshold, VT1, and then VO2 peak is that highest consumption, and then your HR max. So you'll get this report, finding your thresholds. But fat max, what it means is the exercise intensity where the person burns the most amount of fat and the least amount of carbohydrates. The VT1 is your ventilatory threshold, the exercise intensity at which physical activity starts to be considered a workout. So it's getting harder. Your VO2 peak is the maximum oxygen consumption in millimeters per kilogram per minute. That reminds me of college exercise science classes. Your VO2 peak achieved during the test. And then VT2 is ventilatory threshold 2. This is exercise intensity in which the body transitions where anaerobic metabolism becomes a large part of the body's energy generation. So doing a test, we can find out, are you efficient at getting oxygen in, carbon dioxide out? What you can tell too, are you hyperventilating? How are you breathing? Some people have really poor breathing mechanics, so maybe we need to spend more time on some breathing exercises and really increase your lung volume and your measurements there. Now, going back to the zones and the carb versus fat, I want you to note that there's always some carbs being burned. So you'll listen to being, the fat adapted athlete and metabolically efficient. We are burning fat. We want to figure out what zones is endurance athlete where we're burning mostly fat. So this example, the person in zone 2, 72% fat, 28% carbs. It's not zero carbs. You're always burning some carbs. Even zone 1, they're showing 95% fat, 5% carbs. And then obviously it switches over when we get zone 3 is 52% fat, 48. So you're kind of almost 50-50. And then zone 4, 52 to 48% carbs, and fat burns 38%, carbs 62. So you have to remember that when you're fueling, you do need some carbohydrates when you're going higher intensity, longer duration. You might find you're okay during the workout, and we go to Endure IQ's forums there, and I use that for a template, but it's more so post-workout having some carbohydrates with that protein that I talked about in the previous podcast out last Thursday about timing for women, that 30 to 45 minute window, which I did today. I brought my little shaker bottle with my protein, creatine, and my Vicon mineral mix that has a tiny bit of carbs, probably not that as much as we're supposed to, but that is my Laird's superfood bar. I had that for a little more carbs. It's 10 grams of protein. So you want to plan ahead, look at your workouts. Sometimes you might want to reschedule your hard workouts so when you feel more energy and get those numbers that you can hit like today. So that's the thresholds, and then we can figure out your numbers based on your metabolic test. So on the zones, it is science, is using science. We're using your VO2 to CO2. We're measuring your ventilatory thresholds, VT1 and VT2. We just talked about RER values is that percentage of carbs and fat. The fuel switches, aerobic zones, your fat to carbs, that percentage we just went over. BF is the breath frequency, VE, ventilatory, what your expiring levels, and other devices they can do what's called MOXIE to measure your lung capacity. So we're working on heart rate and load, if that's speed or wattage. And what we talk about in the program, and I'm so excited to have the person created this metabolic assessment program, Dr. Daniel, is going to come on the podcast to explain all this. But what we want to know when we're testing is at what exercise intensity do you switch fuel sources? Exercise intensity drives the fuel switch. Zones are athletic or athlete specific. So each person switches fuel sources at different heart rates or loads, your speed or wattage, based on their system's ability to provide energy at each intensity level. Zones and limitations are modality specific. So cycling zones, remember this, your cycling zones are different than your running zones. So don't try to do just a treadmill test and apply the same information to your bike workouts, vice versa. The zones change significantly with the right training protocol. So we want you to get tested every quarter so we can continue reaching your goals. So your fuel sources by zone and the training type we talk about. Zone 1, I explained, is your recovery zone. What fuel source are you using there? Free fatty acids. When you're doing zone 2, also called that long, slow distance, your cardio, your what we talk about, that max aerobic function, maffetone heart rate training zone, zone 2. That fuel source is called aerobic glycolysis. When we get into zone 3, that's tempo, longer intervals, so more of our like half marathon, maybe 10K pace, your anaerobic glycolysis is there. Zone 4, those are those medium intervals, maybe we're doing like 3 to 5 minutes, lactate phosphorylation. So we want to look at zone 4, medium intervals. Then we hit zone 5. Kick your butt workouts. Zone 5, short intervals, 20, 30 seconds up to a minute. ATP, PC, phosphate creatine, and then that fuel source that we're working today and the end of our workout, you need longer intervals, rest-based interval to recover, restore the energy source so you can go hard again. So when you're doing 30-second sprints and you really are going all out to zone 5, you can't just rest 15, 20 seconds and get back to zone 5 and have the same output. So you need to come all the way back down to zone 1 and then go balls to the wall to get to zone 5. So we call it structural training. Structural is training focused on changing limitation-specific structures. So this should be the primary mode of our training to minimize or eliminate structural limitations, especially at the beginning of the season. So this will help the delivery of this, increase our cardiac strength, increase respiratory volumes, utilization, for example, increasing mitochondrial density, increase capillarization. And then resistance, we want muscle hypertrophy is a good example, right? So I know I need and want to be stronger and faster and be able to generate more power on the bike and running, but I have structural problems in my hips that I'm seeing a chiropractor next week and getting ART, and I need a lot of physical therapy to get my left side to fire. My left glute and left quad is not firing. So I can lift 10 pounds on the leg press machine, and we found the leg extension to isolate the muscles, and doing side plank with these leg lifts, I can't even lift my left leg up. So I'm a work in progress on that, but once I get that nailed, I am able to generate more power and speed on the run and bike. Now, what is functional training? So this is what I was saying, if I'm training for a hilly marathon, I want to do hill repeats. If I'm training for a hilly bike ride, I'm going to do longer pieces on the hills. Hills are your friends, I used to always say. So functional training should be focused on making specific functional improvements. We want our primary training focus, if we don't have any structural limitations or we haven't identified any, or if we have a limitation-specific structural training program, we want to focus on more functional training. I'm not there right now as I work on my left side, physical therapy stuff. Intervals are what you want to do. If you are ready for functional training, you don't have any structural limitation, you haven't identified any imbalances as I have, then focus on improving speed, your coordination, modality-specific strength, as I said, doing hill climbing, hill sprints on the bike or running. Those are your intervals. Now, resistance training for more functional training you hear about, that's improve your maximum strength, power, and strength endurance. So I've been working on my strength, but I can't do a lunge very well. I can't do a step up. I can't do box jumps. So I'm working on my limiters right now to gain that strength so I can do that. What I did when I turned 50, I did this crazy workout I designed for my 50th birthday, which was 10 rounds of 5 or 5 rounds of 10. So everything was 50 reps total of doing burpees and box jumps and tire flips, and everything kind of went downhill from there. But I had identified after that, I had this left side not working. So structural versus functional training is what we're talking about. So this is when we do the testing, which I strongly suggest for athletes or anyone who wants to improve the aging process. You don't have to be competing. I'm not racing anything right now, but I want to live my best life, second half of my life, and be faster and leaner and stronger and not use my age as an excuse. So identifying which structures are leading to your performance limitations so we can identify those areas we need to work on. And then we want to train those limiters, figure out your exercise intensity, your zones, your frequency, the type and the time required to impact your whatever we found are those limiting structures. And then we can minimize or eliminate that limitation. So we got to identify it first. What's your, I hate the word weakness, it's negative, but what is your limiter that's holding you back from performing your best? If we can figure that out and then even get it more dialed in, figure out your internal stressors, because that's going to impact everything. If you can't eat the right food, you're not digesting your food, and you have gut issues, you have inflammation in your body, mitochondrial damage, that's really going to combine well with the functional lab testing and do your cortisol test and look at your hormone balance. So that's going to affect, but how we train is one part of the holistic method. Okay, so the benefits of zone 1, let's go back to this. Recovery, zone 1. Stimulates oxygen delivery beyond utilization requirements, thereby increasing oxygen delivery to the limbs. Zone 1 stimulates elevated breathing pattern to promote metabolic waste and carbon dioxide clearance, thereby normalizing the acid-base balance, your pH balance, and recovery. So this is why we come back here to zone 1 after we're up in zone 4 or 5. And then zone 2 we hear all about because Peter Attia and Huberman, I think, started this. But structural and functional training benefits are zone 2, continuous cardio, or we called it LSD, long, slow distance. So we work on structural benefits by increasing our mitochondrial density here. We increased capillaries, so another structural benefit. Tissue adaptation, structural benefit. And then a functional benefit would be endurance. And then we go to zone 3. This is the structural and functional training benefits here of zone 3. These are the zone 3 tempo longer intervals. So the structural benefits here of zone 3, lactate shuttle, protein stimulation, and VO2 cardiopulmonary development. So if you have cardiopulmonary issues identified on your test with the doctor, this might be an area with doctor's approval to work on some time here. Speed endurance is a functional benefit, so race pace. for a half or 10K. Now, structural and functional benefits of zone 4, this is what we talk about your medium length intervals. Structural benefits would be metabolic buffering. The functional benefits of zone 4, coordination, speed, and strength. And then our favorite, we hate but love, love-hate relationship, zone 5. So structural benefits, mitochondrial density, as we heard in zone 2. Capillarization, structural benefit. And then we have coordination improvement and strength improvement. So if you listen to my podcast with the Run Doctor, I'm drawing a blank, but we talked about speed work, to start with speed work to improve your half marathon or marathon. And he talks about doing all these shorter speed workouts to start. So that could be maybe working on structure, but functional benefits, he's probably doing it more for structural. So you learn how to run a hill properly, because it's not as fatiguing as running a hill for 1 mile. But if you ran a slight incline and ran hard in 30 seconds to a minute, maybe that would be your good functional strength plus structural strength for improving your running on hills. So we do zone 1, we figured it out. Remember, it's 10 to 15 beats below the adjusted fat max that we figured out your zone 2. So remember, the adjusted fat max represents intensity that stimulates the highest fat utilization with the lowest carb use, and is used to accurately identify the intensity that will best promote recovery. So we can identify that in your test. We can look at your peak fat, adjusted fat max, carb, fat crossover, and that's where we find zone 2. So zone 2 is adjusted fat max to the fat carb crossover point. So where we see the carbs get higher than the fat. Represents a zone where aerobic glycolysis is the main fuel source before carb utilization exceeds fat utilization, making that switch over to anaerobic glycolysis in zone 3. So we can see the fat to carb. Carbs come up, fat goes down, and we see that point. So we can see that on the graphs, and then we figure out zone 3. Zone 3 is the fat carb crossover point. So we know where the bottom of is at, because we figured out zone 2. So now we can figure out zone 3. Then the high end of zone 3 is going to be the VT2. So that means it's VT2 minus 10 beats cross-reference with the increase in breath frequency moving from mid 20 to 30 breaths per minute. And then they want to look for a significant rise in the VE, ventilatory. So we want to look at the breath analysis here, as well as the fuel source change. So zone 3 in the example here is identified 160 to 172 beats. And you combine these 3 metrics together to figure out the zone 3. So the breath frequency is driven up by what we talk about chemoreceptors responding to an increase in carbon dioxide production, and the pH changes that initiate zone 3 secondary to the fuel source used in anaerobic glycolysis. So this is what we learned from Dr. Daniel in the program, and he is sometime after he teaches finals to his program where he teaches university, speak in our group. But it's pretty fascinating information to really personalize your program in these zones. So if we get into zone 5, we can see that in the chart after we get to zone 4. Yeah, the breath. So the zone 3, let's go back there. The breath is, where is it? 20 to 30 breaths per minute. And then we hit zone 4, and you'll see more of the breathing frequencies moving 30 to 40 breaths per minute. And there's other markers we're looking at, the VE to the start of the second of the BF, breath frequency drive. So the breath frequency is driven up by the chemoreceptors responding to the increase in carbon dioxide production, as I said, and the pH changes initiates zone 4, secondary to the fuel system to use lactate phosphorylation. So cool, right? How do we do zone 5? So zone 5 is the start of the second breath frequency drive. Now we're looking at 40 breaths per minute up to their max heart rate. So the breath frequency BF is driven up by the chemoreceptors responding to the increase in carbon dioxide production now, and the pH changes that initiates in zone 5, secondary to the major fuel source system here is the ATP-PC system, or CRP. So if the max heart rate is not identified during the test, because I'm not always going to be taking people that high up if they're not ready for it, but we want to get this zone set up and get these metrics. So if we don't know, we should be almost there if we're testing correctly, because we have to pick the right protocol for you. So you have to make sure you review with your coach if someone's testing you, that you go over your exercise history so they know which test, because there's like 30 different tests to choose. So there's beginner, intermediate, advanced, different protocols. So we want to choose the right one, because if we choose something too easy, you're not going to get the zones. You're not going to hit that metabolic crossover point, and the test will take too long. And if we go too hard of tests, we won't get a clear picture either. So it should just take, say, like 15 minutes. So the max heart rate, we want to figure out if we can get that information, if you just see kind of where you start to get fatigued. But we can use the reported max heart rate that you've seen in your recent workouts to that modality. So remember, zones are activity specific. You can't transfer zones to different activities. So with the bike to the run to swimming, they're all going to be different. You want to ideally get your bike test on your own bike using a Wahoo Kicker. Is it a good equivalent to a stationary bike or to your road bike to test on what you're comfortable and what you're used to riding? And then a salt bike is something you can do if you're testing upper and lower body efforts. So that's something you can do if it has watts. So just summarize, we're using science, not math, to identify the zones. It's metabolic analysis that gives you the most accurate method of identifying your personalized training zones for that specific sport. They're accurate intensity zones. They're vital to developing effective training plans. So if we're trying to figure out your frequency, intensity, duration type of workout, we need to really dive deep and investigate all these different factors in your lifestyle and schedule and all that. But if you're training for anything specific, or maybe you're just training for life to improve your health, improve longevity, doesn't have to be a race. You want to get a specific plan and have purpose to every workout. So you're not just doing the same old workout week after week, working the same course, the same heart rate, the same speed. You need variation in everything. So you hear that variation in your food plan, your fasting windows, your training plan, your strength training routines. We want to mix up how much we're spending time in each zone. So we want to figure out a plan. Now you can enter your zones onto Training Peaks. Your Garmin and Polar allow you to set your own zones manually. So you can do that yourself once you get tested. Now they change, remember, as you get the right program we give you, ideally come back and get retested every 3 months so you can get a new test, because your zones will changing and you can continue improving and reaching your goals. So think about that. I think it's great information to dive into. And there is more on my website. You can learn about metabolic testing, about heart zone training. I think it's great information to share with you. So I'll try to dive into this more if you want to share what I'm learning through this testing. But there's so much we continue to learn. And I think learning from testing what you need to do for your training, for your resistance workout, what intervals, what nutrition you need, and then look at timing. A lot of people I'm talking to, my clients are coming to me trying to do fasting that they hear online and doing keto and doing 50 grams of carbs a day and doing carnivore. And a lot of that's good reset. But if you have gut issues you need to work on, yeah, it's going to help. But you can't do that same time, ideally, as training when you're training for a big race. So you need to do kind of a gut repair reset protocol on your off season. Don't try to be training for a race and racing and push yourself really hard while you're trying to heal your gut and balance your hormones. So lifestyle habits we want to look at. Breath work is something you can do. What nutritional therapy foods, turmeric and your essential fatty acids, getting good grass-fed beef, getting your food properly digested. Most everyone I work with, we do their lab tests and they need digestive enzymes. They need HCl support. And, we need to add more healthy fats, but we need to add some nature's carbs for some people doing high zone 4-5 interval training, especially if you're doing a 2-day workout as I did today. We have to time our fuel in that post-workout and then eat your meal 3 hours before bed. Make sure you're getting some calories in after that workout so you're getting that muscle glycogen storage and muscle repair ready to go so you can work out again. Ideally not doing 2 hard workouts back to back. Since I did a hard workout today, tomorrow will be easy run, and I think I'm doing master swim again, so it'll be easy swim. I'll do weights and some mobility and then yoga stretching at night. So let me know what questions you have. If you want me to do my Debbie solo podcast on specific topics, just let me know. I've got some other ones on here. I'm going to dive into articles in the creatine and Aristotle. I talked to Cynthia Thurlow about. Dr. Stacy Sims had a big article on creatine. Having that post-workout so essential, 3 to 6 grams a day. Here over and over again, but for mental health as well as muscle recovery repair, especially for women, we need it more than men. And then Aristotle is a great one to talk about for sleep and other benefits. And then also I want to go back to thyroid because everybody, men and women, have some low thyroid and low hormones. And I think it's important to look at how's your liver? Are you doing a liver detox program? How's your gut health? Because it's working on getting the right foods to make our hormones, but we also have the right support in our liver and our gut to convert T4 inactive hormone to active T3. We need the right amount of iodine, maybe that's kelp, and we need tyrosine amino acid, and we need cofactor selenium to make the thyroid hormone. So there's many reasons that you can be low thyroid. It's not just taking thyroid med. Same thing with other things we look at. It's more looking at, okay, this is low, but why is it? What's causing it to be low? And investigating a little bit deeper. What is causing that inflammation in your body? What is causing you to have gut dysbiosis or bloating or gas or constipation? It's not just taking a supplement prescription drug to heal it. We still need to figure out the why, investigate the whole picture to get results, or else we're just putting a Band-Aid on it and not really getting to the whole picture. So that is all for today, guys. It's so great to hear from everyone. So continue reaching out. Follow me on the YouTube channel, Low Carb Athlete, and Instagram is where I hang out mostly, Low Carb Athlete, and the Facebook group page, Low Carb Athlete. And then Stephanie Holbrook has the Keto Endurance group page. It's great to pop in there sometimes and get some questions and feedback. Remember, N equals 1. Men are not the same as women. So if someone gives you suggestions and you're a man and you're giving a female suggestions, if you're a female, don't get it from men. Get it as an idea, but your numbers and what works for you is going to be different from men and women, but also different from all of us, from each other. So your stress level, your sleep level, your activity during the day, your gut health, your ancestry background, your genetics, there's so much more that goes into it. So there's not just one size fits all approach. That would be easy. We'd all look amazing if it really worked like that, but it doesn't. So, if all the fasting and eating low carb and timing your nutrition and exercising, you're still not losing weight, you're trying to do all the right things and you're just struggling to get the results, well, that's where you want to dig a little deeper. So I do an assessment program with people, review your blood chemistry panel, look at what you're doing now and give you some suggestions. And it's with 2 45-minute coaching calls. So that's one option, kind of simple program way to start. Then you can meet once a month if you'd like, reassess, use Training Peaks, Practice Better. I also use Practice Better and Training Peaks with my clients, do my health investigation program where we're ordering functional lab testing and then putting that with their exercise and nutrition program using NutriSense if they do that, or Keto Mojo, using Chronometer, looking at your macros, looking at when are you eating, what time of the day, where your workouts are, And then let's figure out your workout program while we're waiting for functional lab testing. Once we identify these hidden stressors that we all have, then we figure out a protocol if it's, 90 days, 4 months, sometimes more, and then retest. So I love hearing from you. So reach out with any questions. Enjoy the day. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at debbiepotts.net. You can help us to continue to grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.